My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to talk about the rules of engagement, or you can call them the terms of service, that need to be met in order for a good, fruitful conversation to happen. And I want to compare this to some of the communication styles that we've been told that was happening between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. The defamation trial is taking place, and they did have their psychologist, who was their couples therapist, and she was speaking about their communication style. So I want to take a look at their communication style and see maybe where they could have been helped if they would have adhered to these rules of engagement. So let me give you a definition of rules of engagement. They are the internal rules or directives that define the circumstances, the conditions, the degree and manner in which the use of actions may be applied. The rules of engagement do not normally dictate how a result is to be achieved, but will indicate what measures may be acceptable or unacceptable. So to be clear, for today, I don't want to talk about the details and the intricacies of communication skills or the details of conflict resolution skills. What I really want to get into here again is the rules of engagement that need to be there in the beginning before any type of dialogue starts, or if a conversation or counseling couple session goes off the rails, where if these rules are not adhered to, that the conversation needs to stop there. And the reason for that is because if any of these rules are breached, it's been my experience that there's more risk than benefit here. So that's why it needs to stop. If it continues to be hurtful for both partners, more anger, more frustration, and more resentment is going to build up. So we need to cut that. Now, I understand it's difficult to go by these rules. And especially when there's a lot on the line, the stakes are high, people are emotionally dysregulated. I get that. However, when we're dealing with rules of engagement, and that's why I like to use that term, is because rules of engagement have been used in the military, and I know those rules are broken too sometimes, I get that. But there are rules of engagement in the military, and there are definitely rules of engagement in sports. And in those areas, there's obviously a lot on the line as well. So if that's true, and it is, that means we can expect couples during a session to follow these rules in order for a good session or a good conversation to take place. Now, I'm not here to get on the therapist's back in any way and to say anything negative. But according to the testimony, I believe Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's psychologist, which is interesting too, because psychologists, it is within their scope of practice to do couples therapy, but that's not really their expertise. That's not what they do. A good couples therapist would be a licensed marriage and family therapist, but that's neither here nor there. Their psychologist has an amazing resume. And she did, I believe, 21 sessions. I don't know how many were individual, and I don't know how many were couples. But I don't think that matters either. She did have some definite opinions on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's communication. So I'm going to do a synopsis on that real quick, going by what she said. She said, Amber Heard had a jackhammer style of talking in which Johnny could not keep up with that pace. Johnny was cut off a lot, not allowed to speak. Johnny did not have a voice. He could be eloquent when given the chance to speak. However, Amber considered it a point of pride to initiate and to escalate fights. Johnny tried to de-escalate by leaving or acquiescing or accommodating in some way. And here I think it's worthwhile to talk about this real quick as well. When we're dealing with two people that obviously have a lot of trauma here, and there's a lot of emotional dysregulation, we can talk about trauma responses real quick. So from what I can see, and they're not my clients, so I'm speculating here, but it seems like Johnny Depp has two major trauma responses. Number one, he fawns a lot. So he acquiesces, he tries to appease people, he tries to accommodate along the way. He just tries to make things go, right? Like he's not pushing the envelope too much. He'll yes somebody to death in order just to keep the peace. So he's more of a people pleaser, or what we would call, he has a fawn response. On top of that, he does self-medicate, so I think we can safely say that he has a degree of flight in him. So he wants to take his emotions away. Now, sometimes he uses medications to do that, and sometimes he just leaves the situation. And I'm not saying leaving the situation is bad. Under the circumstances, a lot of times, like I said, if certain conditions can't be met for a good, honest, open, productive conversation, you do need to cease it at that point. So he does that. He flees, or he has a flight response. Now, talking about Amber for a second, she has two trauma responses. We can say that she also self-medicates, so there's a degree of flight with her in terms of neutralizing her emotions from the situation. But the predominant trauma response that she has is to fight. And again, according to the psychologist, she takes pride in being able to be hurtful and to be able to initiate and to be able to escalate fights in conversations. So those are her two trauma responses. Now here we can also get into that the psychologist had a very, very difficult job, because there's many, many therapists out there that will not do couples therapy if one or both partners seems to be emotionally dysregulated. Now, I'm using that term. I could say if one partner has a personality disorder, typically a cluster B, such as histrionic or borderline, of which another psychologist did diagnose Amber Heard with, but again, I can't diagnose. What I would look at, I would also say that she's probably pretty narcissistic, and I would also add that both Johnny and Amber both have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. But complex post-traumatic stress disorder is not in the DSM. It's not diagnosable. You would have to say that they have PTSD. But this is why when people are emotionally dysregulated, if you can't meet these rules of engagement in order to have a good conversation, this is why therapists sometimes choose not to do therapy. And the other part behind that is if you have a person or both people who are emotionally dysregulated, they don't know how to listen to their partner, they don't have any active listening skills or empathic listening skills, what could happen is that you escalate the situation more. And then what happens is that they go home or somewhere later, and not only does the emotional abuse continue or get worse, but it could lead to physical violence. Because people who are emotionally dysregulated, typically, especially if they have borderline or histrionic or narcissism, these things like that, they're not there to meet in the middle or to collaborate. They're there to win over somebody. And so this can escalate a situation to a very bad degree. So with that, let's go with the rules of engagement, again, that need to be met in order for a conversation to happen. And I believe if this or these rules were followed, then all of these negatives you wouldn't see over and over again with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. What you would probably see is that they would probably quit, though. They probably wouldn't go to 21 sessions, or it would either happen that they would improve their communication skills, or they would just quit, one or the other. But they wouldn't be going to 21 sessions with the yelling and the screaming and the carrying on. So let's start off with number one. And again, both partners have to go along with all of these rules, all of them. Number one, both partners need to understand that their partner and them are on the same exact team. That means there's no incentive to win, no incentive to manipulate, no incentive to annihilate your partner. Why? Because you're on the same team. They're not rivals, They're not adversaries. And one person, either one, they should never feel like they're sleeping with the enemy or somebody's trying to go out of the way to hurt them. So that's number one. You're on the same team. You can't win against someone when they're on the same team. Rule number one. Rule of engagement number two. Choose your words carefully. Think before you speak. In action, what this means is no name calling. And I shouldn't have to say this, but I guess I do in this day and age, 2022. For some reason, with the popularity of podcasts and the internet, everybody thinks that they're a therapist now. They're not. No diagnosing your partner. I don't care how much you read. It's not helpful. I don't care if you are a clinical psychologist. Don't diagnose your partner. It's not helpful. Number three, no character assassinations. Number four, no threatening to end the relationship every time you're triggered. Because at that point then, it creates a situation where nobody could be honest. Because the penalty is so high, all they're going to try to do is turn into a people pleaser, or they're just going to leave. So it's not a conversation at that point if somebody's threatening to end the relationship whenever they get triggered or hear something they don't like. It's more like the person speaking and it becomes an execution. Continuing, let's use the word think. We'll use the acronym THINK. Start off with the T. If what you're going to say is not thoughtful or not true, no need to say it. Using the letter H. If what you're going to say to your partner is not helpful, no need to say it. The letter I. If what you're going to say is not intended to improve communication or improve the relationship or to inspire you or your partner to be a better person in this relationship, then don't say it. The letter N. Is it necessary to be said? Not every thought in your head needs to be said. Not every emotion needs to be expressed. And there's a way to do it. So is it necessary? And the last letter is K. If what you're going to say to your partner is not kind, is there a reason to say it? No, there's not. And number three on our rules of engagement would be physiologically fit. First off here, no yelling. There's no need to yell. Your partner can hear you just fine. If you're yelling, you're trying to manipulate. If you're yelling, communication needs to end. Or if you're yelling, or if you feel like, again, your heart rate is 100 or above, communication needs to stop at that point. Why? Because when you're having a good conversation, an exchange of ideas with somebody you love and care about, you want to hear what they have to say. You don't want to Amber Heard jackhammer somebody to death with pounding, pounding, and pounding. Jackhammers do what? They're incessant. They're there to break stuff. There's no give and take. It's not necessary. That's abusive. That's not a conversation. That's not something that couples should be engaged in. If your heart rate is 100 or more, and you don't have to do your pulse to know this, you'll know because your voice will be raised. And you'll feel it in your body. If you can feel it in your body, your heart rate is too high. What happens when your heart rate is too high and you're not physiologically fit, your brain starts to work from the amygdala part, which is the fear center of the brain, or we can call it the reptilian part of your brain. Not a lot of reason and logic are going on there. So in order to have a conversation with your partner to be fruitful and helpful, you're not going to be doing it from the amygdala. So we have to cut that out. What you want to do is to be able to speak from your prefrontal cortex using logic and reasoning. So therefore, and this is difficult for people, If you can't keep your heart rate down and you need to yell and to scream, conversation needs to cease at that point, because again, the risk to benefit is too high on the risk end. Now, if you can't seem to do this, that's your job. That's your number one job, is to be able to manage your emotions and feelings before you can converse with your partner. So that would be a goal for who's ever being emotionally dysregulated. Typically, it's both people. Number 4 on the rules of engagement: listen more than you speak. Now, sometimes when people are arguing, the term listen could be triggering, because when somebody hears the word listen, it could be in their past that they use the word listen for the word obey. In other words, listen to me, you need to do this. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real and true listening of your partner. And there's a way to do this. Number 1, there's sound waves, correct? Of course. So you want to be able to listen with your ears. But that's not enough. Because in the back of your head, you don't want to sit there and you're trying to mow down, or you're trying to deny or defend or punch holes in your partner's line of thinking. You want to hear them with your ears. But then you want to use your head. You want to understand exactly what they're saying. And if you don't know, ask. And then you want to use your heart. So we have the head, which would be cognitive empathy for your partner. And with your heart, we have affective empathy for your partner. When these 3 are met, listening with your ears, your head, and your heart, then you can be receptive to what your partner is saying. And then you can respond in an appropriate manner. But all these things need to be met in order for that to happen. It's extremely important whether you are the sender of the communication or the receiver of the communication. Both are equally important, and both people in the relationship need to work on and train to be the best senders and receivers possible in order to have a good relationship. One person speaks at a time. Again, going back to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, as you're following my rules of engagement, this jackhammer style of talking would be eliminated. The fact that the therapist said that Johnny couldn't keep up with her pace, that would be eliminated, because he shouldn't be trying to keep up with her pace, because no one's listening. Johnny was cut off a lot. That's because there's no listening going on. Johnny didn't have a voice. No, we're listening, and then we speak. Again, they broke every rule of engagement. The therapist said that Johnny could be eloquent when given a chance to speak. Well, of course he should be given a chance to speak. It's a relationship. It's a conversation. And again, one person was trying to de-escalate. Both partners should be trying to de-escalate, and neither of them should be trying to escalate. Moving on. If you have difficulty with the thought of listening more than you speak, we need to train your mindset. Both partners need to agree to this. And this is the 5th and last rule of engagement. Both partners need to train their mindset. And the mindset is, number 1, seek to understand your partner. And in order to do this, you need to ask questions. It's not about being critical. It's not about being filled with contempt. They're not on the stand. You're not trying to harm your partner. You're trying to listen to their point of view. You don't have to agree with them, but you want to be able to get this out. They need a safe place to express their emotions and feelings. And one of the things that should be a given in relationships is to be able to have that safety and the security that our partners are not going to harm us for what we say. To reiterate, I like this one. I've helped a lot of people with it, and I hope you remember this. When it's a tough situation, be curious. not furious. Again, if you're furious, you're not going to be in the right mindset to have a good conversation. And furious leads us to our amygdala, and logic and reasoning fly out the window. Be curious, because we want to know more about our partners. We want to ask them how they feel or why they feel the way they do. Again, affective empathy, cognitive empathy. In order to do that, ears, head, heart. Be curious. We're in our prefrontal cortex, and we can have a logical, nice, caring, productive conversation. So again, I wish I was Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's couples therapist, because a lot of this, again, I probably would have only had them for 2 sessions if they couldn't handle these rules. But they certainly wouldn't have 21 sessions of people yelling at each other. That wouldn't happen either. So I hope today was valuable to you. My name is Joe Peroni. This is the Rise Above Project. Please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.